Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast, Fighting in the Square. I'm Sidhaant, and I'll be kicking things off for our team, Shiven, John, Srikar, and obviously myself as well. In this episode, we're diving into the digital world and how has it changed the way we talk, think, and sometimes clash online. Our theme is polarization in digital rhetoric, and each of us took a different angle on how technology shapes division, from social media to news to misinformation and AI. And we'll break down these systems influence what we believe, why they pull us apart, and what we can actually do about it. And it's going to be a mix of insights, stories, reflections, and how the internet affects all of us every day. And so, whether you're scrolling through your feed, catching up on the news, or just curious about everything online feels so divided and why it is divided, this episode is for you. So, let's get started.
Hi, I'm Shiven Mehta. I wrote my newsletter on conventional news outlets, and this is my part of the interview. So I'll be answering a series of questions based on the newsletter I wrote as part of our group's collated piece. So the first question is what surprised me the most um, about my research, and I'd say originally I didn't know much about polarization in the news because I didn't read the news that much. So I was pretty surprised that I saw different news organizations covering the same event in such a different manner, and they kind of emphasized and not emphasized certain things, which was a little scary. For example, like the Time magazine emphasized graphic details in the article about an ICE attack, while Fox focused on the wrongdoings of the immigrants in the article. The next question is, how do you define polarization in your topic? So I would say in news specifically, polarization is like kind of when like the news outlets use like rhetoric and framing that kind of back up like partisan perspectives instead of what the real truth is. The next question is polarization a product of technology or kind of it's amplified by it? So I'd say like polarization has like always existed. It's always been there for as long as we can remember. But I think technology and like online platforms have definitely amplified polarization to an extreme degree by kind of rewarding more controversial content. The next question is, how does your area influence what people see as truth? So I'd say the news outlets shape truth by kind of emphasizing details that align with their audience's beliefs. For example, like CNN, which is generally considered a more uh, is considered more left on the political spectrum, will kind of make their writing they cater their writing to their audience, which is kind of not truthful in a way. And the next question is, were there any examples of clear bias or one-sided storytelling? Um, so in my newsletter, I focused on an ICE event, an ICE attack in Southside Chicago. So I looked at two organizations that covered the same exact event. So I looked at the Time article and the Fox News article for that. And Time is generally considered a more left focused, while Fox is more right focused. So Time highlighted more emotional and I guess human impacts of an ICE raid by describing scenes like children being arrested, like graphic details about the scene, and then Fox focused more on the criminal allegations of the immigrants in the immigrants that were taken in custody by ICE. So they focused on like saying like, oh, they could be like drug dealers, so they could be previous criminals. So that kind of both served their partisan audiences because like right focused people support enforcement and like those kind of ideals. The next question is, can the average person still tell what's real or what's fake in like a news article? And I'd say it's definitely getting harder because these stories are rhetorically shaped and these algorithms are like kind of catered for us to kind of miss on the framing that certain news articles have. And like when we read articles, we just take in what they're telling us when we don't really focus and stop to think about how it could be like manipulating us in a way. This next section is on bias and perception. So how do biases shape understanding of events? Um, so political and social biases kind of guide how stories are told, and the makes language choice of like certain news articles makes readers sympathize with one side over the other. Like for example, in the Time article, it's kind of clear that you would sympathize with the the immigrants that were taken in custody because they kind of emphasized the brutality of ICE in a certain way. What is the role of confirmation bias? So people naturally seek stories that validate their beliefs. So that definitely deepens polarization as they ignore opposing perspectives and sometimes even get angry with opposing perspectives. This next section is about responsibility. So who bears the most responsibility of like about like pull like the people like that are kind of pushing for polarization? I'd say like news outlets and tech companies share responsibility, but the public should also think about like what they're consuming, which organization like they should have like a broad range um of like political like news outlets that they're consuming, not just like one side or the other side, so they can like take in multiple perspectives. The next question is neutral content possible? Well, of course, it's kind of impossible, but I think being more balanced and aware of covering multiple perspectives in an article is kind of prevent that polarization that continues to increase in our world today. The next section is on like solutions and like ways to fight polarization. So, what is one strategy to become more aware of polarization? I'd say obviously read multiple sources with opposing views and make sure to analyze language carefully to see how like the news articles have framed the story. Um, and as I demonstrated in my part of the newsletter, news organizations they do use rhetorical techniques, and I proved that to kind of cater to their audience and make their argument more convincing. And it's also important to recognize that news articles are definitely not completely factual, and they're almost like opinion pieces. It's kind of grown to that point because they're so polarized. Um, what does media literacy mean to you? For me, it's like the ability to question how languages, images, and the tone of authors kind of shape our understanding of the truth. How can we encourage more reasoned discussions and yeah, just dialogue in general? So I'd say fact checking, verifying information in articles, and then focusing on discussion over outrage when engaging with polarizing topics online, or just like when talking to a person who, for example, might not have the same views as you, like not trying to get angry, kind of having a more reasoned and more calm discussion with them, and taking their perspective into consideration is important too. It's important to like slow down, control your emotions and thoughts, and then kind of like put your put yourself in in the other person's shoes, and even when reading a piece of media, like take the other perspective into consideration before acting with anger. Like I remember in one of the they say I say readings we read, I think it was like um 65% of people get angry like once a day in like one of the surveys when reading like the news, which is a hefty percentage, and I think that should definitely be lower. Um, the next section is on personal reflection. So, has this assignment changed how I consume news? I'd say yeah. Like now, I'm definitely paying more attention to like the ways authors are kind of phrasing their sentences. What details are they like deliberately leaving in the essay, and what they're leaving out of the essay. And I always keep both sides of the picture in mind when I'm reading or watching a piece of news, especially if it's on social media or has been generated by AI, because those two those two platforms are like new, like the polarization of news, but like scaled up, and it's so much easier to kind of spread that polarization across these platforms on social media, and AI is really accessible now. So um, I think Srikar and Sidhaant discussed that in their newsletters, or sorry, in their part of the newsletter. And also when I watch videos, I also pay attention to context clues to make sure it is not AI generated. What's one thing you wish people understood? I think I kind of mentioned this before, but language isn't neutral, and it's a tool that can like manipulate your perception and like trigger certain emotions in you. Um, and I guess Thomas Huckin's evidence proved that from his journal article, Critical Discourse Analysis and Rhetoric and Composition, which I referenced in my part of the newsletter. Thomas Huckin kind of showed that there's these ideas called textual silences that are ingrained in like most pieces of writing that are used to, um, they're either used to like leave out information, or keep information that the author is using to support their argument. Um, and yeah, that's my part of the interview. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Sidhaant. I'm recording my podcast section for our project for my group's podcast. So let's start out with questions. So my topic is social media and its polarization. The first question that podcast will address is that when I first started researching my topic and what surprised me the most about how polarization shows up in my area, and honestly, what surprised me most was how subtle it is. And you don't really notice it happening. It's not like people are logging into fight. It's the way algorithms quietly shape how we see every day. And over time, your my feed becomes a bubble, and you start thinking that everyone must see the world the same way you do. And another question that follows this is that how would I define the polarization in the context of my topic? And for me, it's when social media turns normal disagreements into emotional divides. It's not just I disagree with you, it's more as I can't stand you because you disagree with me. And that shift is powered by how these platforms and reward outrage and drama over calm discussion. And the following question is that do you think polarization is a product of technology or something that technology just amplifies? And I'd say definitely that it does amplify it. People have always had strong opinions, but social media pours gasoline on it and lights the fire, continues the flame. And the constant feedback, the lies, the shares, the likes, and it turns small sparks into fires that spread really quickly. And it's like the tech didn't invent division, but it definitely learned how to make it viral. And for the second subtopic is basically the role of media and information. And how does my specific area influence what people perceive as truth? And on social media, truth kind of becomes whatever gets repeated the most. It sometimes it's something shows up in your feed 100 times. You start believing it's real. And it's not about what's accurate anymore. It's about what's loud and emotional enough to get attention. And what examples that stood out to me that showed clear bias on one-sided things in storytelling, the biggest one for me that I ran across during my research, while writing my piece is the misinformation spread during Brazil's 2018 election and around the January 6th riot in the US. Both times, the fake stories regarding these events went viral faster than the truth. You'd find out whatever the truth happened a day or two after. You'd read the really fast media coverage that turned out to be fake news. And it really showed how the system doesn't care if something's right. It only cares if it gets engagement and all this different participation from users. And the next thing is that I think that the average person can still tell what's real and what's manipulated. And in the current before the technology was not good enough to create these type of social media algorithms, and you just see things that and you would be able to take, oh, this is completely fake or this is just completely a lie. But currently I don't think so, and not completely. Like when you're stuck in your own feed, you don't see what other people are seeing. You're if the same message keeps popping up, if starts to feel true, and it since we trust what feels familiar, which is a very huge human psychology thing, is that what seems familiar, and we tend to trust that repetition is very powerful. And that leads us on to bias and perception. So how do these biases shape the way people understand current events? And biases are more like filters, both ours and the ones we built for these platforms. And the algorithm learns what you like and just keeps feeding you more of it. And so even if you think you're a balanced mix, you're really just seeing what confirms what you already believe. And during my research, I found many different certain audiences that are intentionally targeted with specific messages or information. And yeah, it's just a lot of political and marketing campaigns know exactly who to target and how. They use engagement data to push emotional content that gets specific reactions. You have anger, fear, pride, and is fully just depending on who you are. And it's super calculated. And how does this confirmation bias play a role in deepening polarization online? It's basically the engine behind it all. Like we click on what makes us feel right. The algorithm notices and then gives us more at the same time. If you spend more time on a certain reel, it'll just keep on showing certain that reel, or it might keep showing you the same type of reel. And before you know it, you're in a cycle where everything you see proves your point, and you stop questioning it, and you just keep believing. And that's what we. That's just showing the how powerful repetition is. And that leads perfectly on to accountability and responsibility. Like, who do you think, or who do I think bears the most responsibility for reducing polarization? Is it the news outlets? Is it the tech companies, the AI developers, or just the public in general? And I believe that everyone has some sort of piece in this, and I think everyone has some sort of responsibility when it comes to the this issue that we're facing. But tech companies, I believe, have the biggest role. They built the system that decides what goes viral, and still, users also play a part too. If we start rewarding the outrage and start thinking before we share, it would make a real difference. Might put these tech companies at fault. And if I could implement one rule or design change to reduce polarization in my area, uh, I'd love to see a small pause feature. Like before you share something, a pop-up says that, have you read this? Or are you being accurate? Or it's simple. It's just, but even a second of reflection could stop so much misinformation from spreading. Like, is it possible to create these neutral or objective content in today's digital landscape? And yeah, total neutrality is tough, but because even the order of what you see first is kind of biased. Like, but I think transparency is possible. If platforms were open about how they recommended content, people would be more aware of how their feeds are being shaped. And that just leads on to solutions and takeaways. Like based on my research, one strategy or mindset that could help people become more aware of polarization uh, is that I say you should follow people you normally wouldn't. It sounds small, but intentionally seeing other perspectives help you realize filter how filtered your own feed is. You don't have to agree with everything, but just being exposed to different views does make a huge difference. And what does media literacy really mean to me after writing my piece and also reviewing my partner's pieces and just doing the general research is that media literacy means knowing how the system works and how it tries to pull you in. And it's just not about spotting fake news. It's more about like understanding that your emotions are being used to keep you scrolling. And once you see that, you start paying attention differently. You start noticing the small details. Oh, this is completely bias filled. Like this is the other perspective has much more details and is more backed. Like it depends on situation to situation, but you just start paying attention differently. And how can we as students of Georgia Tech and any other college institution or even any age range from middle school, elementary, high school, college, university, master's, grad school, is that how can we encourage more reasoned dialogue and less division online? Uh, and I feel like it 100% starts with how we communicate. If we can be patient, actually listen, and ask questions instead of attacking, that kind of behavior spreads. Like people forget that calm conversations can still exist online. We just have to model them. And overall, the personal reflection of my project is that, of my piece, is that one main question that I have to ask myself is, has working on this piece really changed the way that I personally consume news or social media? Personally, I consume a lot of social media. You have Instagram Reels, you have TikTok, you have Snapchat, you have YouTube, and I would say 100%. Like definitely now when I scroll, I can almost see the algorithm working. Like I'll notice how certain posts pop up, but because they're just meant to trigger emotion, and then if I spend time on one post, like let's say I really like watching Indian dance videos. If I spend time on Indian dance videos, a long time on that reel, or just keep rewatching, I like it, I interact with it, the algorithm knows, oh, this is what this person likes, and it'll work more to get more content like that. And now I'm more intentional about where I get my information and what I share because I'm not easily triggered by these uh, reels or short videos. And one thing that I wish more people understood about polarization in digital rhetoric is that I wish people knew that polarization isn't just about politics, it's about attention. Like every reaction we give tells the algorithm what to promote. If we feed it outrage, that's exactly what it will give you and everyone back. And if I were to summarize my section in one sentence, my piece, the objects and all the research that I did on my topic. And what it would be is that one sentence, word for word, is that social media didn't invent division, but it figured out how to make money off of it. But yeah, but thank you so much for listening to my portion of the podcast for this piece. And thank you so much. And I'll move it on to my teammate. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Srikar. I'll do the podcast questions for my section of the newsletter. So the first question was, when you first started researching your topic, what surprised you the most about how polarization showed up in your area, whether it's news, social media, AI, or misinformation? So my section was AI, and in general, I was surprised at how, blunt and direct the polarization was through AI. Like certain things like conventional news outlets, right? You can't have like bold claims or um, really jarring statements in the news because that upsets a lot of people. But on things like social media, where AI really flourishes, you can have AI videos which are very direct and blunt and convey opinions that are very controversial. And I guess that surprised me the most, especially given how new this, advent of creating AI videos are. The fact that it's being used, very politically was also surprising. So the second question was, how would you define polarization in the context of your topic? I define polarization as content. Polarizing content would be content that creates a divide between two groups of people, like whether it's creating an argument or backing up a certain opinion over another one. So essentially just creating divide between two groups. And the third question, do you think polarization is a product of technology or something that technology just amplifies? I think polarization is definitely something that existed before technology, just because, like, if someone's giving just a public speech, there's no there's no technology involved, but of course it's going to be polarizing. Even things like conventional news outlets, with books, just in general, without technology, there were things back in the day that were polarizing, right? But I think technology definitely amplifies it because now you're able to get your word out to more people. There are more people in this quote-unquote community online that is being polarized and swayed in certain directions. Okay. The next question is, how does your specific area influence what people perceive as truth? So my specific area of AI is used mainly on social media. Conventional news outlets don't really fall for, or they don't really post AI content because it makes them very uncredible, and then they also don't tend to share AI content because it also is uncredible and new and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff is around social media, and nowadays a lot of the youth are getting their news off of social media, and so when these AI videos look look very realistic, like for example the Louvre video of the thieves, that's in my section, looks very realistic, and a lot of people tend to believe that it's true. The next question is, what examples stood out to you that showed clear bias or one-sided storytelling? So the second video that I had in my page, which was about, deportation, immigration, ICE, and of course, like racism and stereotypical concerns. That example stood out to me as clearly like one-sided, storytelling. It was obviously like portrayed as over the top and excessive. And there was a clear bias where they mentioned specifically Mexico, which is of course biased and stereotypical. The next question is, do you think the average person can still tell what's real and what's manipulated, and if not, why? I think the average person right now can tell what's real with AI content, especially videos, because there are usually like flaws in them. But I'd say within the next like a few months or years, or like a year, when these tools advance and just when there's more stuff out there to the point where like whenever you're seeing a video, you're like, is this AI? I think when we get to that point, then we're not going to be able to know what is manipulated and what is not. Okay. Next question is, how do biases, political, social, or algorithmic, shape the way people understand current events? Sure. Well, I think mainly I talked about a lot in my section was algorithmic bias. So the way social media works is it pumps out videos, and its algorithm pumps out videos to people based on how engaging they are. And so things that are controversial tend to get more comments or more shares or more likes or whatever, and so they're pushed out to more people. And so this really perpetuates like AI misinformation, whereas an AI video could be shared a lot and interacted with a lot, but maybe it shouldn't be pushed out to a lot of people. And so that's how these algorithmic biases help push these like fake news out and change people's understanding of current events. In your research, did you find that certain audiences are intentionally targeted with specific messages or misinformation? Yeah, so I guess in my research, they're particularly targeting younger and older audiences rather than in the middle, because these AI videos are, like, while they are good, they definitely have their flaws, at least for now. And so people that are educated in like media literacy are able to tell that these videos are fake, and that generally seem to be like middle-aged people. But younger children and older aged people without much media literacy are especially targeted by these videos and like susceptible to them. And then, how does confirmation bias play a role in deepening polarization online? Yeah, so confirmation bias is essentially like just agreeing with and sticking with the group that agrees with you. And so you have polarization online where these two groups disagree about something. Like, for example, we talked a lot in our paper about, or our newsletter about ICE. And so there's obviously a polarizing debate on whether deportation is a good thing or a bad thing. And confirmation bias plays into this because if you're online, like, you're going to tend to talk to and share with and like more videos that relate to your side, whether good or bad, and then the algorithm will pump more of that out to you. So you're really confirming your own opinions. And then next, who do you think bears the most responsibility for reducing polarization? News outlets, tech companies, AI developers, or the public? So I think a lot of responsibility does fall on news outlets and tech companies and AI developers for sure. Like, they shouldn't be allowing certain things to happen. Like, news outlets should really check their sources more. Tech companies should really be careful about what they let proliferate on their platforms. But at this point, it's the public's responsibility to like take a look at all the stuff that's online, because after a certain point, you can't really stop this stuff from getting online and getting into people's like phones or whatever. So I think the public also bears like a large responsibility in recognizing the content that they're looking at and reducing polarization. Okay, if you could implement one rule or design change to reduce polarization in your area, what would it be? Sure. In my area, it would be, I guess, AI. If I could implement one rule or design change, would be that, like, you know how ChatGPT has those filters where it recognizes when like a conversation or a chat is going in a direction that violates its guidelines. I think those guidelines should be expanded to not really get into stuff that's too political, or like especially creating political cartoons or political videos that clearly have to do with misinformation. So, or at least there should be a warning, even if like the video is still made. I guess you have like free speech and stuff, right? But I think that there should be a warning given, like, hey, you're creating a video that has misinformation and like perpetuates stereotypes or something. I think would be useful. Okay, and then, is it possible to create neutral or objective content in today's digital landscape? I think it's very hard to create neutral or objective content, because nowadays, like, if you go on TikTok or Instagram or like any social media, you'll see that people will tend to argue over anything. Even if you try to create a neutral piece of content, there will be people who disagree with your neutrality and then people who agree with your neutrality. And that again is not neutral, right? If there are people disagreeing and agreeing. So I'd say it's very hard to do that. Okay, the next question is, based on your research, what's one strategy or mindset that could help more people become aware of polarization in their daily media consumption? Based on my research, one strategy would be to just watch out for AI tags. I know TikTok and Instagram Reels does tag videos. There's like this video is like AI generated or contains content that was AI generated. So looking out for those tags can be useful. What does media literacy mean to you after doing this project? It's a good question. I think media literacy in general just means being able to know what you're consuming. So if you're reading some news, or you're watching a video, or you're on social media, knowing the type of content you're getting, who you're getting this content from, and who this content is really about. I think that's important to know. And then we have, how can we as students and future professionals encourage more reasoned dialogue and less division online? I think in general we should do our part to have constructive dialogue online instead of having division and arguments. So I notice a lot of the time we're seeing like people that are arguing with each other. They're finding differences in what they're saying rather than finding agreements and then working to like a positive resolution, which I feel if you're talking to someone in person, you'll try to find a way to come to a resolution. But online, I guess they view it as like there's no point in coming to like a resolution. I'm never gonna meet this person. And so arguments happen a lot. And then finally, as a closer, we'll do the personal reflection questions. The first one is, has working on this project changed the way you consume news or use social media? Definitely. While looking for AI videos on social media, I really came across a lot of stuff that looked very real, and I might not have noticed it when I was just regularly scrolling or consuming this media. So definitely changed the way that I viewed some of these videos. And for the future, I'm still going to keep that eye out. The second question is, what's one thing you wish more people understood about polarization and digital rhetoric? I wish more people understood how damaging polarization is. While we may not understand it now, the polarization that happens like today and then for the next 10 years have impacts for like the next 2-3 generations, because people say grow up on these stereotypes that they see on social media, they grow up and they have kids, right? And they'll teach their kids these stereotypes, and then that's how a lot of things are perpetuated, and a lot of like false misinformation is kept going for for a very long time. And then the last question is, if you could summarize your section in one sentence, what would it be? Okay, the summary of my section would be, while AI is an extremely powerful generation tool, it should be treated with caution due to its ability to create very polarizing content very fast. Okay, thank you. I think that wraps up my section. So I want to thank you for asking me the questions in this interview, and I hope you have a nice day.
Hi, my name is John Mitchell, and I'm here to do my part of the interview. My topic was misinformation and ways you can combat it. So when I first started researching about misinformation, I was surprised by how false information can spread real quickly, and how both regular media and the new technology such as AI can influence that. And it's not just social media, even TV and regular newspapers can exaggerate stories and just leave out the facts, and that can contribute to confusion. So basically misinformation is just means the false and the misleading information that spreads quickly and it influences what people believe in. And technology plays a big role, but it doesn't like create like the misinformation by itself, but it definitely like amplifies it, and such as like through AI. So like AI is being a big, like now in 2025 AI grew very big and it's really a real problem, and I can see it being even worse in the future. So yeah, the roles of media and information. So like media and AI influence what we see as the truth, because they decide what content gets shown to us. For example, like AI can create like something called echo chambers, and this is basically like just places where people only see information that supports their opinions, only their opinions. So basically like deep fakes are like a big issue. They look real, but they completely change what people actually believe. So like because of this, it's getting harder for people to tell what's real and what's like fake, and becoming a real big problem in today's society. And people are not going to just take the time out of their day and do a real fact check and like make sure it's real. So bias and perception also like plays a big role, and people tend to believe information that matches their own beliefs. So basically like what you already believe in, what your like morals and all that, that's going to impact the way you see things and like how you want to look at it. But that's basically called just bias. And like, and if something makes us angry or scared, we're gonna more than likely like share it instead of like checking it if it's real or fake first. So accountability and responsibilities. Like I think everyone has a role in fighting against misinformation, such as like journalists, tech companies, just like regular everyday people. And like news outlets should be double checking before publishing it and releasing it. And tech companies should make their algorithms more transparent. So, but if I could make one change, I would make like media a real deal part of school education, so people can learn how to tell what's real and what's fake between media. But it's hard to like make content completely neutral today. But being transparent about where information comes from can build a lot of trust, and we need that as a society. So my solution and like key takeaways from all this, just the best way to combat information is education and awareness. So we can all do our part in checking the sources, questioning what we see online, and having open conversation about what's real and what should be getting released, and how we can like make it better, so like the news and the media don't have to do it all by themselves. But so like basically like the truth is way stronger than lies, and we can make, as if we come together as one, as a whole society, which we are, we can make the misinformation that's being spread around all over news every single day about anything, about politics, anything, just make it not come to that, and make it so like we wouldn't have to be worrying about misinformation about a person or a company be getting spread, and that can like definitely ruin somebody's just whole life. Misinformation can ruin everybody's life. It can ruin your life, my life. It don't matter. It's what's getting spread and is fake. And that's what people don't want to have in their life. So if we come together as one, we can make our society a better place when it comes to media, the share of media on news, on social media, on everything that you look on your phone. So, yeah.
And that wraps up our episode of Fighting in the Square. I'm Sidhaant, and I want to thank you for all of you guys for listening as we explored how the digital world shapes the way we think, talk, and sometimes even divide. And huge shout out to my teammates Shiven, John, and Shrieker for dividing into their own perspectives on polarization, AI, media, and how to combat all of these things. And if there's one thing to take away, it's that awareness is the first step. The more we understand how technology shapes our conversations, the better we can use it to connect instead of divide. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, keep questioning your feed. Thank you.